Now we have Professor Dimitrios Buhalis for the next session, which will be on smart tourism for rural development. Professor Dimitrios Buhalis is a strategic management and marketing expert with specialization in information communication technology, smart environments, and interactive marketing. He is an expert in technology applications in the tourism, travel, hospitality, and leisure industries. He is also editor-in-chief of the most established journal in tourism, Tourism Review. Now it's SSCI Journal and it's in its 75th volume. Professor Buhalis' research is referenced widely, being the third most cited for tourism and first most cited for hospitality, 18th on strategy and 30th in marketing on Google Scholar with more than 43,000 citations and H index 87. He has taught in more than 50 universities around the world and delivers more than 30 keynotes per year. For the period January 2016 to September 2019, Dr. Buhalis was the head of Department of Tourism and Hospitality at Bournemouth University. During this period, the department was ranked 8th in 2018, 10th in 2019 in QS World University Ranking by subject 2019 Hospitality and Leisure and Management, as well as 9th rank in 2017, 12th in 2018, and 10th in 2019 and 20 in the Shanghai rankings for global ranking of academic subject, hospitality and tourism, and third in the Guardian University Guide 2019. Dimitrios is a founding member and past president 2010 to 2014 of the International Federation for Information Technologies in Travel and Tourism. He served as the first vice president of the International Academy for the Study of Tourism 2017 to 2019 and as executive board member of the United Nations World Tourism Organization UNWTO affiliate members 2013 to 2015 and 2017 to 2019. Dimitri's current research focus includes real-time and nowness, smart tourism, hospitality, social media context, and mobile marketing, augmented reality, technology-enhanced experience management and personalization, reputation and social media strategies, accessibility and special diet tourism. Professor Buhalis is a well-known international speaker on trends, technology, marketing, tourism, and hospitality. Professor Buhalis is an inspirational forward thinker that undertakes cutting-edge research, develops innovation, and makes a major impact to global society. We are really honored to have you with us, sir. Now I request Professor Buhalis to address the special session on smart tourism.
Thank you very much. A great pleasure to be with you, and it's an honor. Can we eliminate the presentation of the previous speaker?
We are doing that.
Thank you. And also, can you give me the right to be able to share my screen?
Excuse me. I request the previous presenter to please take down the presentation.
Mr. Nimesha Raja Karuna. Hello.
You can share now, sir.
Let me see if I can do it from here. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it is visible now.
Okay. Great pleasure to be with you, and fantastic to be able to contribute to your conference. And I'm very pleased to hear the previous speaker talking about e-tourism, because I spent my life working on e-tourism. And it's very interesting to see how different authors are taking these things forward and engage in this conversation. Let me see if I can do, now you should be able to see my screen fully, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Normally I don't speak about rural tourism. Normally I speak about smart and ambient tourism, and I'm talking about all these technologies that we normally have in different areas. So I had to look into a little bit about rural tourism, and I had to go back into some of my knowledge and experience on rural tourism to see how we can adapt technology for rural tourism. Because normally, when we're dealing with technology, we are primarily talking about big cities, because it's really about managing large crowds and large populations to manage those things. So when we're looking to rural tourism, we primarily talk about rural locations and countryside. We're talking about rural life, art, culture and heritage. Quite often we're talking about agriculture. And we look into the benefits that tourism brings to community, both economically and socially. And we are looking to how we can enable interaction between tourists and locals, and providing authentic and rich tourism experience for consumers. Quite often, rural tourism entails farm and agricultural tourism and nature-based tourism, but also quite often we are dealing with cultural tourism, adventure and ecotourism. Within the context of the natural environment and the culture, the heritage and the tradition of this place. Normally, when people are talking about rural tourism, we're talking about something really, really nice and something that brings to community benefits that they wouldn't normally have. But when we're looking to rural tourism, we need to understand a little bit holistically what's happening. So how do we bring travelers to the heart of the community? What kind of infrastructure we require, and what challenges we bring to the way of life of the rural communities, and how can we enable rural communities to benefit socioculturally, environmentally, and economically from this kind of activity. Therefore, it needs to be a strategy and a very careful planning, and also anthropology and sociology need to be involved in this planning to make sure that actually tourism brings to the communities rather than communities are used as a source for tourism activity. And I think I'm your last speaker of this conference, and I think it's really, really critical to understand the strategic importance of tourism in rural areas. But equally, we need to understand that we have got to do it right, because otherwise it will be detrimental for the communities. And when I was planning this exercise, I kind of thought, oh my God, what do I know about rural tourism? And then I decided, I realized that I spend a lot of time in rural communities, and this is probably a picture of 40 years old with my sister and my cousins working in my uncle's farm back in Greece. So I kind of start realizing that I've done much more in rural tourism than I realized. And this is last weekend, going to rural areas in England and exploring, of course, the beautiful countryside of the rural area. But when you start looking to what tourists do when they go into different places, we are kind of intruding to the local facilities and the local environments. This is Bali a couple of years ago, where I was here on the rice plantations here on the seaside, interacting with the local people in rural settings. And this is when you've got famous tourism professors going together in rural areas, and they kind of engaging in things that they don't normally part of. And this is me interacting in a village in Ghana with the local ladies who were cooking this banana fried or whatever they used to call it. And this is trying to buy a goat in Oman, in the local area. And also rural doesn't necessarily mean agriculture. It can be on the sea. So this is in Oman getting a lift by the captain here to a different place and have a local meal with a lady who was cooking it in the local village. And this is China again. Food and rural tourism are going together, serving local noodles and get tourists to come along to them. I thought that I'll give you that so I can kind of open your mind about what we're talking about rural tourism when we're looking into a global basis, because quite often, especially from India, I get manuscripts in tourism review where people are talking about only about their local area and their local village, and they don't understand rural tourism in a bigger picture. Now, when you talk about smartness, real tourism, and nowness, you talk about data integration. You talk about bringing data from wherever the data are and engaging in data mining in real time, understanding how we can use e-tourism principles to generate more value for everybody involved. So customers are quite keen to have smart data so they can personalize services and contextualize and engaging experiences. And they use this data to provide, to get instant gratification from the various experiences that they've got around them. So they're using smart data and e-tourism before they travel in order to make decisions, during their travel in terms of managing their experience and understand what's happening locally and how they can take advantage of those things. And then post-travel to share experience and do reviews and engage in different places. And you can see some reference. I'll give you reference on different things because obviously I cannot explain my lifetime research in 30 minutes, but you can read some of the papers in order to see how things have developed. Smartness is about networks, and it's really about taking advantage of the interconnectivity and interoperability of technologies to re-engineer process and data in order to produce innovative services, products, and procedures towards maximizing the value for all stakeholders. It's all about re-engineering everything we do, the actions, the process, and the services in real time, and engaging different stakeholders simultaneously to optimize the collective performance and competitiveness and generate agile solutions and value for everybody who is involved. Smartness is really the glue of interoperable and interconnected mutually beneficial networks and stakeholders to create value for all. So this is the generic kind of smartness information, which is based on networks. It's based on the Internet of Things. It's based on the Internet of Everything, sensors, beacons, big data, social media, user-generated content, and all the rest of it. And smartness and technologies bring disruption in the marketplace, which creates new ecosystems. And those ecosystems are bringing together the supply side and the consumer side using a range of different technologies in the middle, in the marketplace, in order to synthesize new innovations on smart environments. So we can provide better experience for people who are traveling, and also you can provide better opportunities for the people who are engaged in the tourism production. So what we have is smart suppliers providing information that's all going up to the cloud in terms of technology. Then we've got value aggregators who are looking to the crowd, and then they're bringing a storm of value back to consumers to be able to consume and enjoy products, and then going back to the tourism suppliers as feedback. And this process goes around and around and around very, very frequently in order to maximize the benefit for everybody who is involved. The personal encounter is happening right in the middle of the market, where on the one side you bring tourism businesses and tourism employees, on the other side you bring tourism consumers to create that personalized experience in real time and make that magic moment that you have in personal encounters. And smart tourism destinations are really about ecosystems that are taking advantage of technology, people, and leadership, all together to create an ecosystem where economic actors, social actors, and technological actors are coming together to create smart innovations. And all the smart innovations are then creating the value for everybody who is involved. So you'll see a lot of those things in the publications I'm suggesting. And most of those things are primarily addressed in urban environments, in big cities. So this is in Seoul in Korea, where people have got different indicators to see that everything is going right, the traffic is right. They've got security cameras, they've got all kinds of traffic cameras to understand what is happening, and then they've got different warning systems to tell them if something does not operate in the right way. So all these indicators are bringing data from various sensors, various cameras, various technologies from a whole range of different organizations that they're all interconnected. This data is being aggregated in the cloud, and then they are choosing what kind of information they should see and how they can engage in this information in real time to come back with solutions for different organizations and different players. This, for example, is the bus system, and they can see how many people are on each bus and which buses are running on capacity, and they are deciding what they can do about it. They may decide to bring more buses into the system, or they may decide to change the pattern of planning of buses. Of course, all these things are happening in smart cities and in urban settings where you've got a lot of organizations that are interconnected, and a lot of companies that are producing data, and those data you can have and you can develop it. Now, in rural tourism, where primarily life is simpler, there's less population and people are using less technology. A lot of those things are not manageable. We cannot do them because we don't have the data, we don't have real time, and we do not have the infrastructure to be able to manage these kind of services in rural areas. So this is a major challenge, because if we do not understand what is happening in rural areas, it is very difficult to use smart technologies because we don't have interconnectivity, interoperability of the players that are happening locally. And I think when you start looking at rural tourism, you're talking about this is some of the pictures I found when I was looking to rural tourism in India and different places. You look at taking tourism to the heart of communities around and engaging tourism with people that they do not have technological development. Sometimes they don't have electricity. Sometimes they've got basic issues. And there's a huge issue about bringing those guys into these communities and what's the impact of bringing those guys in these communities. But again, what we see is increasingly we're looking at smart farming, where you're using a range of different technologies to control, monitor, and plan agricultural activities, and to look at how you can start engaging different players electronically in this kind of activity. This is the digitization of agriculture, and a lot of developed societies, they've got to do that in order to be competitive. So they're using all kinds of technologies to make sure that that they're doing all kinds of agricultural work to understand when's the best time to harness, to understand what's the best time to water plants, and to do all the kind of things. So that brings me to what I call SOCOMO, which we really need to understand on the one side, the travelers side, and on the other side, the industry. And you need to understand social media, connectivity, and devices within the internal and the external context of tourism. Internal context primarily is talking about the individuals, what their likes and dislikes, their preference, their company, what they're familiar with the area, the topics of interest, and their emotional status. while the external context is really about the location, the weather, the social environment, the season, the time, the political situation, traffic, emergency delays, air pressure, and light. So I think we need to develop rural tourism, e-tourism for rural tourism, and smart tourism for rural tourism, where we see the different kind of players and stakeholders, and we also see how we can enhance and enable them to be able to use technological developments, and on top of that, start working on smart tourism for rural areas. We really need to develop the infrastructure of rural areas before we can develop smartness. Now, with technology developments and mobile applications, we may be able to move forward in different ways and use microwave technologies to enable interconnectivity of mobile devices and bring everything in a different way rather than what we had to do in cities where we had to dig and develop fiber optics and different kinds of technologies. But I really want to make people understand that that smartness and rural area is bringing a whole range of challenges. This is a paper we did, and a research we did in Spain about something that's called cochinillo. Cochinillo is suckling piglet that they're cooking in a very nice way in Spain. And we start understanding that although people are talking about authentic tourism experiences, quite often they are not in a position to actually enjoy them, and they would like to have what we call stage authenticity. They would like to have products and services and experience in a way they can understand. So when people were served what we call the non-adapted product, so the whole piglet together, as it has been in the oven for many hours to become so nice, people felt really, really bad about having this kind of meal. While if it was plated and served in a portion, they quite enjoyed it. That means that in rural areas, we are having practices that different cultures accept, while other people do not accept. So it's really about design and strategy and planning about what do we produce and how do we produce in a way that adds value to everybody who is involved. You can take a choice whether you would like to see the product as it's served originally in Spain, or whether you like it as they serve it to the tourists. But you need to understand who is your market and what you do with these things. So we need smart solutions, and the smart solutions are taking advantage of the sharing economy, the autonomous vehicles, artificial intelligence, big data, real-time management, and robots. And I'm particularly interested in real-time and the concept of nowness. So real-time is looking to location-based services, that is looking to how we provide information in geotagged locations by looking to mentions, hashtags, sentiment analysis, trending, keyword tracking, competitors, and everything else. We need to understand what's happening in its place in order to be able to provide real-time services. And we need to support travelers when they're going around to satisfy their wants and their expectations and engage with them in digital touchpoints. Now, all of these things are available, and rural areas can actually do them. The only problem is that most of the people are not in this mindset, and because primarily they operate in agriculture, or they are on the seaside, or they're doing rural kind of jobs, that they are not necessarily engaged in those kind of services and those kind of management of digital media. Having said that, when you look into rural areas, you find a lot of young people that they are quite connected, and they are doing like anybody else, and they are teenagers. They are very, very much operating on the digital space. And they kind of look into those technologies as a way to digitally escape their locality. So perhaps we need to train this young generation to be able to understand what the consumers are like and make them part of the planning process to support rural development and smart tourism, smart rural development. This is a framework that we really looked into. What can you do to, how can you use nowness and real-time tourism for achieving competitive advantage? And we looked into the fact that you can achieve competitive advantage by price or differentiation, as normal strategic management says. But perhaps more importantly, it's really about instant gratification. It's the element of time. And the element of time is enabling people to understand what's happening in a particular village, let's say in an Indian village, in real time. And how can they engage in authentic experiences? How can they understand and take advantage of customer engagement? How can they have a social presence and interact dynamically towards co-creating their experiences? I think this is really important because tourists are temporary citizens. They pass by our place for a period of time, and we really need to give them value for money, but increasingly value for time. So what do I do if I come to your village? How can I engage with the local people? How can I explore things that I'm really interested in? And how can we manage to co-create experience in real time? So this is the next generation, the new developments of e-tourism, which I call Ambient Intelligence, is when smart systems bring together everyday environments, propelling interconnectivity and interoperability of all systems, vehicles and devices through the Internet of Things and the Internet of Everything. We're talking about technical developments like artificial intelligence, machine learning, ambient connectivity through Wi-Fi and 5G, and autonomous vehicles and robots. Ambient Intelligence is pushing markets and activities towards smart, interconnected activities and marketplaces. And it will be a bigger challenge in rural areas because of two things. One is the infrastructure is not there, and second, the mindset is not there. But I think we need to start looking into how we can help rural areas to develop their mindset in engaging with this kind of technologies, especially with the young people who don't necessarily want to work all their life in agriculture, and to bring together communities to take advantage of the developing areas. Increasingly, we'll see things like that primarily in cities, but we'll see them in rural areas as well. So Ambient Intelligence is bringing together the Internet of Things and of Everything through 5G and Wi-Fi services, using RFID technologies, smart devices and wearables, and to bring together through a range of sensors and beacons that they're increasingly coming forward with pervasive computing or gamification, and they are taking advantage of artificial intelligence and machine learning. What is the objective of all that? Is to provide better experience for consumers who are traveling around, but more importantly, is to enable them to communicate and interact profitably with the local society and engaging them in value co-creation with the local society where everybody benefits from that. So interactions will be happening between business, governments, consumers, employees, interest groups, local residents, and robots and machines. But those interactions need to be managed in a way that they are providing benefits to all stakeholders, not just to a few stakeholders. And I think that is critical, especially in rural areas where you are bringing tourists primarily into the very heart of the tourism community. Because in a big city, there are a lot of people, I don't know, in London there are 12 million people. If you bring tourists forward, you can operate them in a different way. If I bring tourists in a local village, it's a very different operational challenge. And the important thing is to be able to bring benefits to the local community. I went very quickly through a lot of things. Here is a list of publications that I've been doing for the last few years. You can see more on buhalis.com publications, where you can see how I'm developing all those things and the strategic developments of tourism and the technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for this elaborative discussion on smart tourism. It was Really an honor listening to you, and it was really a great learning session for all of us. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Great pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like to take any questions? I'm more than happy to answer questions.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. House is now open for the question. If you have any question, any doubt, anything, you can ask anyone.
Uh, yeah, Dr. Buhalis, I have a
Hello.
question for you. Yeah. So, yeah, you just mentioned, when we talk about rural tourism, there is a chance that you get very close to the people, those who are in the rural setting, and at times they may not like you to intervene in what they're doing. So how do we kind of balance that? We need to really be very careful. How do we take it forward? What's your take on that? Your experience on that?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I started from the beginning by talking about planning management of interactions, because
Yeah.
actually tourists can take advantage of people in rural areas, and especially in the beginning, where people in the rural areas, they're very welcoming. They bring you in, they give you food, they give you hospitality. They're very honored to have you there. And then after a while, people may take advantage of rural areas. And equally, after a while, when you've got a lot of people coming through, they just realize that they are a disruption. They may not bring any benefits. So I've seen villages in Bali where they are charging a fee for people to go in. They've got the communities are coming together. They manage their community very carefully. They have identified what the tourists want, and they created this kind of offering. So in terms of food, in terms of souvenir, in terms of how they engage it. And most importantly, there was agreement, and in Bali, you've got the chief of the village and you've got the structure that is helping those things. There was agreement between all the people that this is what we would like to do. I'm not sure, and also they supported it by having some young guys from the village, some young people from the village, learning different languages and being able to interact with people. They've got a guiding system. They take people around. They know who are the villages who do not like tourists to come along. They've got a system that says if they close the door, they don't want tourists today because something is happening there in their household. So there are systems that we need to think about, but it's really critical, first of all, to not think about rural tourism as something that's necessarily a good thing for communities. So it's a good thing provided it's done properly. And the second thing is really managing that interaction in a respectful way both ways. Let me tell you, on those villages in Bali that I've visited and they're doing this, it's some of the cleanest villages I've ever seen. So if I take tourists in a rural community, I'm not sure if the village will be as clean as the tourists would like. I'm not sure if they will serve the piglet in the way that the tourists would like. And I'm not sure if this is the right thing to do, but it's a matter of decision. So I know I know villages where they're doing what we call stage authenticity. When the tourists are around, they're doing things in a way that is helping each other. When the tourists are not around, they're doing things in a very different way. I don't know if you do it in India, but there are things that people do in rural communities that it will get tourists really, really upset, like cockfighting. Okay, so, and I'm not saying yes or no, it's a local tradition, wherever, but I'm saying you need to understand what each of the partners would like in this business and see how you can manage the experience in the best possible way for everybody to benefit.
Thank you so. Thank you so much.
Professor Buhalis, thank you very much. You have enlightened about your smart tourism, specifically in terms of rural area, rural development. Uh, as I'm in India, and we are facing a tough situation concerned to the cooperation among the rural people. Uh, so this is one of the behavioral issues we are facing. in some of the part of the rural and the remote area, and which is very beautiful. It is concerned to the spirituality also, it is concerned to the heritage also, but for the development of that area, we are facing tough hindrances in terms of their mindset, in terms of their situations and their lifestyle. So these are the hindrances we are facing over here. It is need to be rectified.
I'm not surprised at all. And you kind of sound that you've got an agenda. You have accepted that, and this is what you're doing, right? But I think you need to be open-minded. And I think you need to look into the local communities and say, okay, which local communities would like to do that? And under which conditions? We should really understand that the local communities own their resources. They own their places. And it's not the professors or the government who goes there and says, look, this is what you're going to do. You're going to lose your house, you're going to lose your privacy, and a lot of tourists are going to come here and take pictures of you. It's if they want to do that. So, and I've helped communities around the world to actually think about those things and say, look, if this happens, you should have an economic benefit. And you should be able to operate in a different condition, because quite a lot of times rural communities are struggling economically because agriculture, I mean, you know, if you're producing rice or if you're producing animals, there's a very difficult and competitive life that you have. And tourism quite often is bringing quite a lot of money into the place, provided it's done properly. If it's not done properly, it's taking money away. So we need to look into planning, management strategies, and we need to engage people and to make sure that those people who would like to have tourism, they do it in a way that they identify. I think once you do that, you just realize that communities are changing. And that's a change that some people like and some people do not like. Quite often we think that the young people like it and the old people do not like it, because all of a sudden they cannot speak the language. I don't know. If you've got German people coming in India, they may not be able to speak German. They may not be able to serve them in a proper way. You may not have the right toilets. You may not be able to provide sanitized meals and all the rest of it. So it's a matter of planning and management. If you feel as a community that you would like to do it, you can do it. I don't think that there are umbrella solutions. I don't think that everybody can do it. I think it's a matter of discussion. And quite often what people are doing is they're creating another village, a demonstration village, which is in a rural setting, but it's actually kind of a theme park, where tourists are going there, and those people who like to engage with the tourists are going there, and they generate the money that they bring to the community, but the community is behind closed doors. The community is protected. There's no one solution. There are a lot of different solutions depending on the region, depending on the geography, depending on the culture, depending on all kinds of things. The other thing that in India, you're talking a lot about domestic tourism. So in India, a lot of your tourism is domestic. The minute you go international, when you have got Chinese, Australian, British, German, American, Canadian, Egyptian tourists coming along, it becomes much more complicated. When you've got domestic tourism, and you're a huge country, so like China, it's the same thing. A lot of the tourism in China, a lot of the tourism in India is domestic. So in that sense, your context is very specific. But if you're a small country where you're trying to attract people from internationally, you need to think a whole range of much more complicated things.
Yes, rightly said.
Professor Buhalis, can I ask a somewhat different question? If you were able to take out this crystal ball of yours, polish it up, and look into the future, bearing in mind we are going through some very extraordinary times, And it's likely that the effect of the pandemic would mean in the next 5, maybe even 10 years, our movements will be somewhat restricted or limited with social distancing, limitations to travel, and just basically being conscious that we might be infected and so on. And I want to particularly take the point of the young who are, say, in their teens going on to their 20s. And if this group, which is very technology savvy, which is has a different mindset to the baby bloomers, and if this group is prevented or restricted from the travel and has a different viewpoint, what do you think is a knock-on effect on tourism in the next 10, 20 years?
Thank you. I think this is a very challenging and complicated question. In fact, it's not one question, but about 10. And I'm not sure that my crystal ball can go as far as 20 years in tourism, to be perfectly honest. I think what's happening, I think COVID is a reality, and I think right now India is suffering dramatically more than other regions because geographically it came to India. But every country in the world is suffering from COVID, and I think this is a temporary kind of situation, which is going to pass. I have faith in medicine. And I think for the first time ever, we collaborate so much to come up with solutions to this common enemy. And I think in the next few years, or not within the year, we'll have medicines and we'll have vaccines to be able to combat the virus. So I take as a granted that this situation will pass in the next couple of years and will be going out again and will be operating different ways. Having said that, COVID is going to have various impacts and people will be traveling different ways. And in fact, what we've seen is that rural areas have benefited this year because most of the cities are empty. Most of the hotels in cities are empty. And a lot of people who want to have holidays, they did staycation, and a lot of people went to rural areas to escape the crowds. And actually, they created more problems there because the rural areas didn't have the medical infrastructure and they didn't have the infrastructure to deal with the amount of people that they welcomed this year. But in the south of England, for example, in Bournemouth, we've got a fantastic year as far as tourism is concerned because a lot of people didn't go to other countries like Greece, Spain, Italy, and they stayed in the UK for holiday. And those people quite often, they went into their own private car and went to villages around and they're trying to find, cream teas and fish and chips and things that you do by the city. So, I'm very, very careful not to generalize because in this horrible situation that we experience, some people have actually benefited dramatically because their destination was in a place where people felt safety and they felt that they can go there and they can do it. I think the issue about young people is really critical because a lot of young people do not find rural areas attractive and they don't want to live with their mom and dad for all their life. I'm not sure if this is in India because in India you've got different structures of society and family, but in many, many different places, the young kids, they would like to study, go away, and live in big cities in different conditions. I think rural tourism can give these people, young people, an opportunity to create a very good livelihood within the region, and engage with their communities, and they operate in a different way. I think there is a huge issue with agriculture and how we can operate with agriculture in the future. But I think tourism and smart tourism in particular will bring solutions if we do it right. If we don't do it right, it will bring problems.
Thank you.
Any other question?
Dr. Enrico, do you have any query, question?
No, thank you. I did appreciate a lot the presentation of the Professor Buhalis. Thank you again. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you so much, sir. Namaste to you too. I I extend a heartiest welcome to all the experts and participants. Now we are moving towards the valedictory session. In this valedictory session, on the behalf of DIT University Dehradun and our conference partners CPLD Dehradun, I sincerely thank the dignitaries, esteemed keynote speakers, session chairs for being with us and enlightening us with their enthusiastic remarks. Now I request conference curator Mr. Anup Kumar, HR manager Brit Kul, Government of Uttarakhand undertaking the brain behind this conference to proceed with valedictory address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Buhalis, who has given me opportunity to call him straight away from UK. And it is a great pleasure and honor for all of us that he has given his precious time of around 40-45 minutes on smart tourism. And I would like to speak that Dr. Buhalis has given his consent in a group of people, and that group is called Trinite, and around 4,000 members are working in a single email ID. And we met there, and it is our privilege and honor that he is with us today. Uh, I would like to say something that there is an organization which is called Vardering India. It is working in Dehradun, and the owner is Mrs. Nisha Sinha. She is the women entrepreneur, and she is fostering towards the organizing international conferences as well as releasing the international journal. And this is a startup company, and we hope that it will flourish further with the help of all of you. Uh, I thanks to DIT University. DIT University is one of the big university of the northern India, situated at Dehradun, Uttarakhand. It is a hill state of northern India, and it is having different type of faculties, including science, management, law, and other faculties. I met Vice Chancellor over there. He is Dr. Professor K.K. Raina, and I have given this idea to him, and he vehemently accepted my idea without thinking a second. That this is a very good opportunity for DIT University to organize this fantastic rural tourism uh, topic as a international conference. And at that time, it was, I think, last year, October 2019, when COVID-19 was not there. And we have planned to organize this in the month of April 2020. But in the month of March, we faced international lockdown, so it couldn't be materialized. Uh, After that, I met from DIT University, Dr. Hemraj Verma, who is sitting here and is smiling very nicely. uh, he is the man behind the whole scenario. He has given me the guidelines how to we can proceed even after this pandemic situation, and he has boosted up us that don't worry, we will go to the virtual conference, and the whole world is doing this. So we have planned in the month of August, then we finally settled down on 12th and 13th of this September. Uh, Besides Dr. Hemraj Verma, his team is also a very much fantastic team, and they have supported me with all their expertise and technology. And I would like to take their name also, Dr. Preeti, Dr. Priyanka, and Dr. Vijay Jain.